It's a Matter of Insurance presented by the New Hampshire Insurance Department. Have questions about your coverage? Consumer protection is our mission. Contact our Consumer Services Division by calling 1-800-852-3416, consumer services at ins.nh.gov, or visit our brand new website at insurance.nh.gov. Before we dive into the topic today, I definitely want to first offer the department's thoughts are definitely with those suffering from recent back-to-back hurricanes in the southeast of the United States. It has been catastrophic for them, and we hope they're able to get the help they need in order to deal with the really catastrophic damage that has been through that part of the country. The reason why we wanted to dive into the nuances when it comes to named storms and large perils is because hopefully ahead of time, you will look at your coverage. You will make sure you do everything you can to be prepared before the storms happen. So as we see these things happen in other parts of the country, we want Granite Staters to be prepared before those big storms, before we start seeing these huge winter storms, especially as we're known for here in the Northeast with nor'easters and such. But sometimes hurricanes and other tropical-based storms do make it to this part of the country. And with that, we're going to be talking about specifics when it comes to hurricane season with your homeowner's policy, your auto policy, and the specifics when it comes into some of those issues, including flood insurance, which is a constant issue we get questions about here at the department. And I'm joined today by Luann King, Supervisor for Property and Casualty Compliance. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, AJ. Yes, we are obviously still well within hurricane season with at least another 6 weeks to go. And we have had some devastating storms this year. So I appreciate you letting us take this opportunity to talk a little bit about this hurricanes and the storms in general as it pertains to insurance. It's always a good idea to be prepared ahead of time for these types of catastrophic events. And from an insurance perspective, what this means is that you should make sure that the policies you have include all the coverages you want at the limits you want, and that you understand all of your deductibles, limitations, and exclusions. Not all policies are the same, and that's otherwise everybody would just buy the least expensive policy if they were all identical. So it's really important that you understand your specific policy. You can do this either by reading the policy yourself or by contacting your agent for assistance. Policies can be very tricky to read if you're not familiar with how they're set up. And by this, I mean, there's always going to be a base policy coverage form. That's the thickest document in your insurance packet. And just as the name implies, this is the starting point or the base. From there, depending on the coverages that you choose to have or choose not to have, there'll be endorsements attached to the base, which change the base accordingly. And then finally, there's always going to be one form attached that's called the New Hampshire Mandatory Endorsement, or some version thereof that includes the words New Hampshire in the form name. And that New Hampshire endorsement is the most powerful as it changes any conflicting language with the base and the endorsements. That form is used to bring all of the policy's language into compliance with New Hampshire's laws, our statutes, and our rules. And so from there, if this is all overwhelming to you, the best place to start would be to just contact your agent and just say, I just want to have a good understanding of what I'm covered for, what I'm not covered for. And then also, if there's something that you're not covered for that's important to you, are you able to buy back that coverage? A lot of times, policies don't include every bell and whistle that is available by a company. But if you just ask your agent, that oftentimes they'll let you buy back whatever that important coverage is to you. And there's nothing worse than finding out after the fact, all you needed to do was place a phone call ahead of time and you would have had coverage. So back to hurricanes, let's start talking about your auto. Generally speaking, your auto is going to be protected by damage caused from a hurricane. And generally we're talking about wind, falling branches, and flood. So as long as you have comprehensive coverage on your policy, you're going to be covered for the wind, the falling branches, and the flood. Comprehensive coverage is always subject to a deductible, which can, and you get to choose what your deductible is. The deductible is what you're going to pay out of pocket before your insurance actually steps up and starts paying. And then your insurance will pay from above your deductible to your policy limit. The lower your deductible or the lower your out-of-pocket costs, the higher the premium that you're going to pay for your policy, and vice versa. And I really recommend that you have your agent quote out a bunch of different deductible options, because the the price might not be as significant to lower your deductible as you might think. So it's really easy for your agent to quote out a bunch of different deductibles and make sure that you're comfortable with what you have.
This might be a good time to also pop in and mention that definitely shop around your coverage every few years, especially if you haven't looked at it in many years. Shop it around, talk to your agent. If you that's kind of the advantage of working with an independent agent, is they can shop around to multiple carriers. You go to trustedchoice.com, for example, and see what agents are maybe in your area, or maybe if you already work with an independent agent, just tell them, hey, it's been a while. Can you shop around my coverage again? And so oftentimes you can get different rates, sometimes even better rates on your premium and things like that.
Excellent advice. Yes. Let's talk a little bit about your home. Your home is also going to be protected from some of the damages caused by a hurricane, generally speaking. There's one major difference that I want to point out between your auto coverage and your home coverage. That is flood. Flood is never covered by a homeowner policy, where I mentioned that flood was covered for comprehensive coverage on your auto. So it's always important that you know flood will never be covered by your homeowner policy. The good news is there is flood insurance policies available. Again, you're going to speak to an agent for this to purchase flood insurance policies. There are some private policies as well as federal flood policies. I'm sure we've all heard of the FEMAs and the NFIPs. So FEMA is the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and NFIP is the National Flood Insurance Program. And you'll absolutely need a flood insurance policy to have any protection from flood for your home from an insurance standpoint. Aside from flood, your homeowner policy will generally provide protection from wind and falling branches or trees from a hurricane. You'll be responsible for paying the deductible first, and then the policy provides coverage above that deductible amount up to the policy limit for that peril. So I want to mention here, there are some homeowner policies that have one deductible that applies to all the covered perils that the policy covers, but there are some policies that have separate deductibles for certain perils. For example, there may be a wind, hail deductible, or a named storm deductible, or even a hurricane deductible on your homeowner policy, in addition to the regular or standard all other peril deductible. This policy is going to be prominently displayed on your declarations page. The declarations page, or deck page as we call it, is usually on top of the actual policy itself and summarizes the policy's key information, including deductibles. If your policy has a separate deductible for, say, wind or hail or named storm, in addition to it being displayed on the deck page, you're going to have an endorsement attached to the policy explaining the changes to your policy in detail. Sometimes deductibles are a flat dollar amount, $500 or $1,000, and sometimes they're a percentage of the coverage that you have on the home itself. That's going to be your coverage A on your declarations page. Something else to be aware of, some policies have endorsements for cosmetic damage. Essentially, when this form is attached to your policy, this would mean that in the event your home's roof was damaged from a covered peril but still functions, meaning it doesn't leak but it just looks dented or dinged, the company's not going to be responsible for paying, because the damage itself is cosmetic in nature and not structural or functional. These are just a few examples of endorsements that could be contained in your homeowner policy that impact how a covered loss is settled. That's why it's very important that you know what you have for coverages and deductibles before you have a loss. Again, your agent is your best resource to help you with all of your insurance questions and needs.
Yeah, and something to also put in there, we've mentioned this in the past, but if you do have a storm go through and it didn't necessarily cause a lot of damage, it's something you can manage to do the repairs, especially with regards to these more cosmetic issues. You want to also avoid putting excess claims in with your insurance carrier, because it will affect your coverage going forward. It could result in increased rates and things of that nature. So if it is something smaller, even if it was a hurricane, you may be best served by taking care of it yourself, as opposed to putting in a claim and saving those claims for when you have more catastrophic damage that you really need that coverage to come into effect.
Excellent advice. Yes. In the event that you've suffered a loss from a hurricane, from an insurance perspective, the first thing that you will want to do is contact your agent and report the loss. Your agent will ask you for information and may even ask you for pictures or videos of the damage. You have a responsibility to prevent your property from suffering further damage after a claim, and your agent will instruct you as to what you must do. It could be as simple as tarping maybe a hole in the roof from a tree branch to prevent further water damage, for example. And additionally, your agent may ask you to provide an inventory of the items that were damaged. This can be a daunting task after you've just gone through a traumatic event such as a hurricane. So you might not be aware of everything that was damaged. I mean, depending on how badly it was damaged, it might be not recognizable. So it's always a good idea to have an inventory of your possessions prior to needing it. I recommend it could be as simple as taking your cell phone and putting it on video, and you're walking around your home, opening drawers, opening closets, opening cupboards, and you just have a rolling inventory video of all of your possessions. And my phone backs up to the cloud, so I always have a backup should my phone be part of the damage of the storm. For others, you might want to do a paper list, and there are forms available online that actually help you organize and inventory your home by rooms if you prefer that. Just a piece of advice: don't keep the papers with the inventory in the same, in the house that might have been damaged by the hurricane. You might want to consider a safety deposit box, for example. The last piece of advice here, as tempting as it would be to throw away the items that that are beyond repair, you don't want to do that unless you have been instructed to do that by your agent or insurance company, because your insurance company is going to want to see the damaged items so that they know that you had them, and then they can take the steps to repair or replace them for you. If you throw them away, you can't just say, well, I threw that away, and they're not going to give you any coverage for that if they don't see it.
Super important advice. In addition, the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, which we are a member of, also does have a home inventory app that allows you to categorize your things you have in your home for an inventory. Be sure to also export the inventory and save it in places that if your phone goes away, you have more options to find that inventory, which is going to be very important, especially after a storm like this. All right. So Luann King, thank you so much for joining me today. Some important advice for those that are maybe suffering these storms currently, but hopefully it's primarily going to be people that are looking to be prepared before the storms hit so they know what to do. So thanks again for joining me.
Thank you.
Insurance.nh.gov does have a disaster preparedness section. If you go to insurance.nh.gov, halfway down the homepage, it's right there, or you can click on consumers and you'll find disaster preparedness. It has checklists for different things to consider before the storm to be prepared. Things to have around the house to make sure that if a storm does hit, you have the supplies you need to be safe for a few days until help can arrive or power comes back on. So please be sure to be prepared before the storms hit, and because when the worst case scenario happens, you don't want to be having to struggle to find the resources you need. As always, if you ever have insurance questions or concerns, please reach out to the New Hampshire Insurance Department at insurance.nh.gov, 1-800-852-3416, or consumer services at ins.nh.gov.